Sourdough. I'm sure by now you're all familiar with sourdough. The idea of making sourdough really appealed to me. Nurturing a starter that had been passed down for generations, daily artisanal loaves baked fresh in my own kitchen, intricate designs scored into each loaf. It didn't take long, however, to find myself kind of overwhelmed by the whole process. Feeding something every day, making sure it's healthy and growing, weighing everything with precision, stretch and fold, rest overnight, and then 24 hours later, a loaf of bread that may or may not have risen. It would be another year before I gathered my courage to attempt trying my hand at it. I knew it would take some getting used to, that I would need to find a way to work it into my routine. But having read how much better it was going to be for us, I was motivated enough to give it my best attempt. A wonderful friend of mine brought me a jar of her starter, the original being something like 15 years old. You know how these things go. I wish I could say that from then on, I was hooked and never looked back. But in fact, I made a number of loaves, kept my starter alive for a few months, and then stopped. I started growing tired of putting the work in, only to have the entire loaf gone by the end of the day. It's been a year since then, and there have been a few things I've learned over the past year, which have made the whole process seem less intimidating. As it turns out, you in fact don't need to continue making bread every day. You can tuck your starter away in your fridge if you need a bit of a break. They're surprisingly resilient. And instead of making one loaf at a time, you can do a triple or even quadruple batch, and then keep them in the fridge until you bake them off one at a time over the week. So after asking my friend for another jar of starter, she enthusiastically obliged. I've started again. This was my first attempt. It took me a couple weeks to get my starter to a place where I'm happy with it. In our older home, it seems to be perfectly content sitting by the wood stove. It was sort of like riding a bike. I just kind of fell back into the swing of things. This time, however, I wasn't so obsessed over the times between stretches and folds and rests. I just did them as I remembered and kept a rough timeline. It made it much more relaxing. And I think this really is the nature of it. It's not a rushed thing. It's a slow ritual. For millennia, this is how bread was made, daily. Just 3 simple ingredients: flour, water, and salt. This beautiful, complex world of wild yeast and good bacteria, a whole unseen dance of natural processes. There is so much I still have to learn, so many techniques to keep practicing, especially the scoring. I have a few discard recipes I'd like to try over the next while, and a few other sourdough recipes I'd like to attempt. But for now, we're just happy with our warm loaves from the oven. Deuteronomy 8 verse 3 says, "And he humbled thee, and suffered thee to hunger, and fed thee with manna, which thou knewest not, neither did thy fathers know, that he might make thee know that man doth not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of the Lord doth man live."